Hi guys, Tuger here with a new video, and this video will be my updated solo shuffle tier list video for season 1 of Dragonflight. Again, there will be a lot of patches. 10.0.5 is probably coming out in 2 or 3 weeks, so it will be again shuffling the meta, but I feel like this current patch will shuffle a lot. It's a big patch with a lot of changes. I feel like it deserves a video by itself. I made a video about the changes, so if you want to check that out, please check that out. But I'm also going to discuss class by class where I'm going to put them in on tier list. It is only for solo shuffle. Remember, I will maybe do a 3v3 updated video as well in the future. But I feel like right now for solo shuffle, the meta has switched 100% with the current nerfs. I don't think that classes are dead. I just think that they are going to switch into a specific meta where I feel like a few specs are going to thrive into this current meta. But anyways, let me know in the comment section below what you think about this tier list. Again, timestamps, you can jump from class to class, and I will always give explanation behind specific tiers on specific classes. So you can also understand, and you can also discuss with it with your friends, guilds, or even with me in the comment section below. I always try to respond. At least it becomes more and more difficult because I make a lot of videos, I get a lot of comments, but I always try to respond somehow, some way, and sometimes a bit later, sometimes a bit sooner, but please bear with me. So we put tanks on a separate tier because I feel like I don't face versus nearly enough tanks to actually put it on a tier. I don't want to actually only go with hearsay. I want to actually see for myself what they are worth. I guess Brewmaster can do good because there is one at 2400, but I never faced one and I don't know how potent it can be. It could also be that it is just super annoying to play against and you have your other DPS that is actually doing the groundwork for you. So I don't know, I never faced one, so I can't know. But I want to talk right away with the important stuff. So, DK. I feel like the patch notes do facilitate a lot Death Knights, especially Unholy, a bit less Frost, because again, the meta is a bit different for them. They can be countered with a disarm, they can be countered by a lot of stuff. They are also a lot less tanky because they don't have necrotic wounds actually healing them constantly, while for example Unholy DK actually does that. I'm going to give a harsh rating because I think this social will be a social tier list will be a bit more harsh, where I feel like I'm going to give a bit less leeway towards classes where I feel like they could be better. For me, Frost DK is a C tier. Often than not, it is Feast of Famine. You can have lobbies where you're going to be going 6-0, and then you have like lobbies where you're going to be 0-6 because you're facing versus the classes that you really don't want to face. Let's say rogues, let's say warriors, let's say windwalkers, they all eat you alive. If you're facing casters, you're going to have a great time because you have a lot of damage, you have a lot of CC, you have annoyance with AMS, AMZ, you have the ways to actually improve and get rating. But if you're facing versus a lot of warriors, rogues, and windwalkers, you're going to have a bad time because every time you're going to do a pillar go and they have somewhat of a brain, they will just disarm you at like right away. And yeah, sometimes you will do a chill streak and you're going to kill someone with it. But again, if your pillar go is not reliable, even though it can get reduced because of crits, it is still not enough to have 30 seconds pillars. So you will never have a pillar whenever someone doesn't have a disarm. So just because of that, for me, it's a C tier spec. I love Frost DK. I do also play Frost DK. I just think it is not the best class at the moment with the current meta that is going to switch towards those specs. Unholy DK though is untouched for multiple like patches. They even got a buff like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, just because of damage. It was basically for PvE, but it also applies for PvP. And the nerfs on the survivability doesn't really apply as much on Soul Shuffle. Death Strike is indeed a big nerf, but in Soul Shuffle, dampening is very high, and I don't think your healing will be very high in Soul Shuffle. Anyways, AMS and AMZ though, very useful versus casters. Your damage is very splashy. It just feels like you're not going to one-shot anyone. But if you're seeing like details and such, you are doing million damage with small hits. While, for example, a Demon Hunter will do one the hunt, you will do so much damage with pets, with diseases, with your own strikes, that you will get the same DPS or even better. And since Demon Hunters got nerfed, Shadow Priest got nerfed, I feel like the top dog melee DPS is now Unholy. I think Unholy is really an S tier spec until 10.0.5, where maybe Arms Warriors are going to get a rise and they're going to be very potent. For now, it is not the case. So until 10.0.5, until we know all the changes, we don't know if it's going to be changing the meta as drastically for DKs. For now, I feel like DKs are going to be splendid, and I think it's going to be a very S tier spec. It was already S tier in my books, but since they are actually nerfing Demon Hunters, SP, you have different other nerfs. So I'm going to show you guys. Like Shadow Priest is a big nerf. You get also buffs for affliction and destruction, which basically as a demon hunter, you're a demon with a death knight, you're going to be actually very potent. And then you have like a few nerfs here and there, like for example preservation evokers on mana. You're going to have nerfs on the windwalker one shots, which is basically what is very scary for a death knight. Like it's the thunder fist damage reduced by 40%. That is going to be very big for them to actually survive the damage. Assassination rogues also getting nerfed. So all the nemesis from Unholy DKs are going to get nerfed, and just because of that reason, for me, it's a S tier spec. Demon Hunters, now they got nerfed. I'm going to show you the nerfs really quickly. I'm not going to discuss about it because I already have a video about that, but basically Leech is getting nerfed, so you will heal less. You will also have a less damage reduction on glimpse, so you will be less slippery and you will die quicker. Essence Break, the buff is already halved by 2, so it will be less bursty and also less consistent damage because of Soul Rend. So they might change builds in the future. And the hunt again, I might show you a example in a future video, but whenever you're doing the hunt, the same tick will be a dot application, and that is pretty much 20% of the hunt damage, more or less. So you will have a 20% nerf just because of that, which is massive. And because of that reason, I think like Demon Hunters are not going to be as scary, but they will be still scary in Soul Shuffle because they have a lot of utility, they have a lot of CC, they have a lot of damage still, they have a lot of defensives that are actually very annoying to deal with in a Solo Shuffle environment. And I feel like for me it's an A tier spec. It will be top dog A tier though. It's still going to be very represented. I think it will be still very strong, but I think now the Demon Hunters will have to play a bit more careful, but also a bit more methodical to actually win games. If you're spamming the same things as previously, I think your damage will be still a lot lower and your kill pressure is going to be also a bit lower. And since Glimpse is getting nerfed, you're going to be also very much killable, and you should not rely only on that PvP talent to actually survive damage. But I think it's still going to be taken because of the CC immunity that you can have with it. Balanced Druid. So I played a bit of Balanced Druid myself. I played against a lot of great Balanced Druids. I think Balanced Druid in Soul Shuffle is not as bad as you may think. It is also not as good as some people may think. I think Balanced Druid is one of those classes that are going to be pressuring you and your team a lot, but it is also very lobby dependent. You can also play versus a Hunter, which basically freedoms the root beam's target, and you will have not really a root beam to actually pressure. Of course, you have Cyclone, which is one of the best CCs that you can actually apply in PvP. Especially as a Boomkin, you have the points to actually spend into Cyclone, in comparison with Feral Druids that have to go to more tankier ways to actually survive damage. And I feel like it's a B tier spec. I did rate it a lot lower previously, but now that I have played it, now I've played against a lot of Balanced Druid, I feel like it's really in a great place. It could be better. Hopefully in 10.0.5 they do not go with the changes that they actually did on the PTR. But if they are actually changing to a way where you can choose between AoE and single target damage, it will be a great spec to play in Soul Shuffle. In trees, I think it depends about the meta, it depends about the damage you will have and the scaling that you will have. If you're going for full haste or full mastery, depending on the situations. I think in Soul Shuffle you can still have great games as a Balanced Druid, but it is lobby dependent, but it has more of a leeway compared to a Frost Decay, where Balance Druid cannot really get stopped except being trained, while Frost Decays can be stopped with a disarm or just huge physical damage. So for me, Balance Druid is a B tier spec. Feral Druids are for me S tier. I don't even want to explain why, but I'm still going to explain to you. They get a 3% extra buff on all abilities, which is it's going to be noticeable. It's not going to be game breaking as well. But Feral Druids already do a lot of damage in Soul Shuffle. I know it's a PvE change and it will be applied for PvP, but I think Feral Druids are on the verge of being the best melee. The problem is it is just one of those harder specs to play, and it will never be as popular as a Demon Hunter, as a Death Knight, as a Warrior, just in general, because it's much harder to play. It will be also much harder to survive damage. The things that Feral Druid has to do is to actually survive damage, and you will see the difference between a good Feral Druid and a bad Feral Druid. A good Feral Druid will survive damage, a bad Feral Druid will just tank all the damage, and that's pretty much what's the difference in Soul Shuffle. Your AoE damage is insane, your single target damage is insane, you have Cyclone, which you should not take, to be honest, but if you can take it, it means that the matchups are correct for you. Let's say you're playing versus casters. But you can also just disregard Cyclone and be a huge menace as a Feral Druid. You will have a lot of damage, you will have a lot of survivability, a lot of kiteability depending on the comps that you're facing, depending on the lobby that you're facing. I think you're a great healer killer as well. Some matchups are maybe a bit worse, like let's say you're playing versus, I don't know, Preservation Evoker, because again, they can just dispel your bleeds. But even then, you're constantly applying bleeds. It will just probably dispel every time you're Feral Frenzy, but you often enough you can kill without it because of your bleeds. So I don't know. For me, it's a S tier spec. Some people put it in A tier, some people even in B tier for some reason. But I feel like just the damage and the capacities to actually run away just makes it a S tier spec. Resto Druid is for me a S tier spec. No debate. Not getting touched. It is very good. You can play layback. You can play. To be honest, DPSs are not super bright. I do play DPS, so I know what I'm talking about. We do sometimes line our healers, and Resto Druid is probably one of those healers that are the less affected by lining. They can just have a lot of hots, and if you're getting lined, no worries. You can move with your forms. You can also just be very mobile anyways, and you can also be very, very strong with your cyclone. If you're cycling correctly, you're going to do a lot of good for your team. If you're cycling a DPS that is actually bursting, they will 100% trinket, and that's a safe stun into maybe a kill. So I feel like Resto Druids are very fantastic. Devastation Evoker, I think it's on the same level as like a Frost Decay. It is scary to face, but I feel like again, it's trainable. Again, it's killable. Again, it's not as simple to play. I think the many times where I see a Devastation Evoker, we do train it till death, and they do die or lose a lot of games. You can win games depending on lobbies. Again, it depends a lot of the lobbies. But if you are playing versus like specs that are going to train you age 24, I'm not even going to say, but I'm going to say right now, Demon Hunter with a DK, that lobby is like cursed for you. You're not going to have a great time. If you're playing versus like Arms Warrior, why not? Because you can root them, you can basically kite them until the infinite, but you're not facing Arms Warrior as much. If you're playing versus a Rogue, he's going to destroy you into a kidney shot. If it's a shadowy duel, you're going to get, or if it's a death mark, you're going to get depending on the specs. I mean, you as a Devastation Evoker is going to probably suffer really quickly, and I feel like Devastation Evoker is just very hard to balance because again, lack of spells, lack of actually depth of the class. It's either Feast of Famine, it's either going to be S tier or C tier. I don't see a world where it's A tier and it's going to be meta but not God tier. I don't see a world where it's going to be like garbage as well. So I think it's really C tier, like close to middle of the road, a bit less. So that's why for me it's going to be a C tier or a B tier spec, like all around the expansion. I don't think they will get god tier any soon, but they're also never going to get garbage any soon. We have Preservation Evoker, which is also a S tier spec. And depending on your views and on specs that you're going to play, you're going to say Preservation Evokers are quite easy for me. And then you're playing versus Resto Druid and you're going to say, God damn, I prefer to play versus a Preservation Evoker. And the same, vice versa. If you're like a Shadow Priest or anything else, you prefer to maybe play versus an Evoker instead of a Resto Druid, or you prefer to play versus a Resto Druid instead of an Evoker. I am an Arms Warrior, I prefer to play versus a Preservation Evoker instead of a Resto Druid, because a Resto Druid can just kite me till the end, can root me, perma-root me all the time, and it's very hard to deal with because you cannot really do a switch except if they're like suicidal and they go like towards the enemies and yeah, they get slashed. But Preservation Evoker has to do that if they want to heal, and they are switchable. You can also stop them with a fear whenever they're doing commune, and at that point you can just do a big switch, and often than not they can die. So I think they are S tier both, but depends always about the spec you're playing. Some guys are going to say Preservation Evoker is probably the best S tier spec, and some guys are going to say Resto Druid is probably the best healer overall in whole Dragonflight. So I don't know. That's more preference, but for me, it is going to be both S tiers. BM Hunter, for me, BM Hunter, I played a lot versus BM Hunters, and for me, it is good. B tier is a good rating. It is not bad, it is not average, it is actually good. It is not meta because of obvious reasons, but it is good because, again, obvious reasons. I think Trap is not as bad as people say. It gets broken, but often or not, the healers are like 100 yards from the other DPSs. And I know it's an exaggeration, 100 yards. They are going to be 30 or 40 yards. But basically, you're going to always have a stun and then an ice trap, like a frost trap. And you're going to do good. And your pressure is pretty good. You have Turtle, you have Ross, you have Freedom. Your constant damage is actually good. The only thing that is going to be annoying is your pets getting rooted, your pets getting feared, your pets going to get stunned. And yes, if you're facing Windwalker and the Windwalker stuns the pet and you're pretty much dead. But you have to play around that. You have to put like pet move the pet outside of the range of the Windwalker so you can actually roar sacrifice yourself while you're stunned. I think BM is a very good spec. I just think they lack the actual damage outside of their pet to actually be better. It will be always B tier just because of the fact that the pets can be rooted, killed, and also just stunned. And just because of that, I cannot put them at A tier, but you will face a lot of BM hunters that are actually very good. On the ladder, you have a few demon hunters very close to be top 1, top 5, top 10, and that's actually very big because BM hunters are like not overrepresented, so you have to play around that. Survival Hunter for me, it is going to be C tier. It's always going to be depending on the person that is going to use Survival Hunter. The problem is it is much more on your face. If you're playing versus a melee lobby and the Survival Hunter is next to you, he's going to die. He's going to get switched on. The pet is going to die because of a cleave. And yes, you can make it work. Of course, if you're comparing it with big mechs, of course, the best Survival Hunter at the moment. Maybe I don't know another survival, but for me, this is the best one. He is going to make survival very good. He's going to make it feel good. It will make it. They will make it work. But I would say the average Joe that is going to play Survival Hunter is probably going to be a C tier spec. Just because you have lobbies where you cannot do a lot, or you have lobbies where you have to play more smart. When I say smart, I mean you play more annoying for the enemy team. Um, it's just not as reliable as BM. I think BM has constant damage all the time. You can kite very well without losing any damage. And the potential of damage of BM Hunter is a bit higher because of that. The consistent damage is higher for me as a BM Hunter, while the burstiness of survival is a bit higher, but counterable. I think hunters in general are very good into demon hunters, so you have something that you're going to say, oh, okay, that's my thing. I'm going to steel trap the demon hunter and he's going to stay in place for 8 seconds. But outside of that, if you're facing a warrior, if you're facing a shadow priest, if you're facing anything really, you're going to suffer really quickly. For me, is going to be also B tier. They're not meta. For me, A tier means that it is a meta spec. I think is probably on the surface better than BM, but you will see more BMs higher tiered than on the ladder. So I feel like just because of that, I have to see and to take the ladder into account. And for me, BM Hunter is just a bit better than Also, it is not a 10.0.5 tier list, but once double tap is gone, you will have to play a bit differently, and depending on what they are going to replace with it, you're going to have a bad time. So I hope they will change more for 10.0.5, and I hope they have time to do that. Because hunters, I want them to be good, but right now it's either they're going to be disgusting, or they're going to be just good, or they are going to be very bad. And for me, it is just good right now. Arcane mages are for me A tier. It doesn't matter how difficult it is to play. Um, Whenever you're kind of good with arcane, you can really kite a lot. You're going to do a lot of burst. It is the new fire mage, in my opinion. The damage is more consistent than fire mage. You have also more burst potential. You have also more burst like moments, and just because of that, I think it deserves a tier spot. It does a lot of damage. The polymorph can be broken, but again, like I said, healers are standing 30 yards, 40 yards from their DPSs. So in general, you're always going to have an opportunity where you can just do a DB sheep, or you can just DB the DPSs and then sheep the healer pretty quickly, pretty easily. So for me, it's an 8 tier spec. Yes, you have bad lobbies, but as an arcane mage, in general, if you have bad lobbies, you have to kite as much as possible so your other DPS can do the killing for you. And at one point, you can just do an arcane barrage, which is going to hit or crit for a lot because you have an execution proportion with it, and you can also stack it to be very high. So for me, 8 tier. Well, fire mages, I'm going to be honest. I have to take the ladder into account, and just because of that, it is going to be a teacher spec. It is going to be very bursty like Arcane Mage, but the survivability is a lot worse because Blazing Barrier is still nerfed in PvP because of Shadowlands. They don't have the things that made it good in Shadowlands as well, because again, you were night phase, so you could also move while you're actually resetting your CDs, where right now you will have to stand still. People will just not let you cast it. People are going to stun you, so you have to play with the blink instead of shimmer. You're going to have a bad time as a farm mage. You can make it work though. Again, it's skill dependent. It's not because it's a D tier spec that you cannot climb, but it makes it a lot harder. That's pretty much a tier list. Tier list is it easy to climb with that spec? And if it's D tier, it is not easy. If it's C tier, it's a bit less easy. B tier, it means, look, it's good to climb with it. A tier, it is meta to climb with it. And S tier, it means that it is God tier to climb with it. It's also power related, but you also have to see, look, is it going to be a good time to actually play that spec? And Fire Mage, for now, it's not really a great time to play with it. Although they get a lot of buffs these last patches, depending on how the next patch is going to go with 10.05, it could make Fire Mage a bit better, like overall. Frost Mage. So Frost Mage for me is difficult to judge because I feel like some Frost Mages are making it very good and very like fun to play against and fun to play with, but I feel like it's more killable than Arcane Mage, and I feel like Soul Shuffle is really a bracket where survivability is everything. And for me, Frost Mage is one of those specs that are actually very killable. It's very hard to get kited because of that, because of Frost Mages. But if you have like lobbies where you don't really need to kite, like let's say Elemental Shaman are going to destroy you. I think Shadow Priest kind of destroys you as well. You Demon Hunters are going to be annoying, but you can kite a Demon Hunter. A Death Knight is going to be on your face all the time. Even an Enhancement Shaman is going to kill you pretty quickly as well. So it is very lobby dependent. Enhancement Shaman is not even meta, but if you're facing versus them, you're going to feel very bad. So for me, it's going to be a B tier. It is really good. But it's not meta because for me, Arcane Mages are the meta spec for mages, while for example frost mage is like the good spec, and then you have like fire mage being like below average, and that's pretty much the tier list I would say for mages. Monks, I'm talking about Mistweaver monk. It's actually I don't know, I felt like it was very good in the beginning, but people know now how to play against. I feel like it's very killable as well, very switchable. Once you see Cocoon popped on someone, generally everyone is like tilting their heads towards the Mistweaver. You don't have a defensive anymore. Let's go for you. And then you're going for them. They try to kite. At one point, they kite too much. You switch on the DPS, you kill it, you murder the DPS, and you're good to go. Or the Mistweaver doesn't kite because he knows that you're going to switch on the DPS, so he stays with the DPSs, and they're going to get murdered by Arms Warrior, a Demon Hunter, a Death Knight, and anyone that can actually take the Mistweaver and say, look, I got you this time. That's pretty much the feeling that I have whenever I'm playing versus a Mistweaver. They are like always in danger. Multi-healing is not that great. And for me, since a lot of specs can actually give pressure versus a lot of people at the same time, I feel like Mistweaver is just a B tier spec. It's like good. B tier, again, is a good tier. It is not bad. So I want to preface it every time. B tier is not bad. I just think Mistweaver is just not as good as let's say the others healers in my opinion. Windwalker is legit good, but it got nerfed on Thunderfist, and I really don't know if it's going to be better to play around consistent damage. Now, you kind of counter Feral Druids and Death Knights. Why Feral Druids? Because again, a life sweep into a burst rotation, Feral Druids are not going to survive it, and Death Knights don't really have defensives versus physical damage dealers. You're also not going to get disarmed on your DPS, so it's actually very good. Kiteable, meh, not really. You have some escape routes, so for me it is going to be still A tier. I need to see if it's going to be hitting them too hard on Turn of Fist. I'm going to be honest, that's more of a prediction of my part. I think they're still going to be very, very good and very, very potent in social form. I think in trees it is going to be a bit more difficult because there is more coordination and your burst is going to be a bit less, so it will be more manageable. While in social fall, again, you can switch on anyone and probably kill him and murder him. Rising Sun Kick still hurts for a lot, and now your Blackout Kick and your Target Palm are also going to hurt a bit more. So I feel like, again, you can feel it as a nerf. I still think it is meta because solo shuffle depends about the classes you're facing, and if you're a Windwalker, you face a lot of Death Knights, a lot of Feral Druids, even a lot of Warriors, you're going to do good in general. So that's for me a tier spec. Holy Paladin, in social fight it's not as bad, but it is very, very solo shuffle lobby dependent. You're going to have lobbies where you're going to say, why am I specking in Bob? Because it is not going to save anyone. It is magic damage dealers. You're going to suffer, or at least your DPSs are going to suffer. And if you're playing versus physical damage dealers or melees, they're going to train you. So basically, your Bob is there, but whenever you have Bobbed or Divine Shield, you have 30 seconds where you're going to be in danger zone, and if the melees are like a bit more smart, they're going to switch onto you and you're going to have a tough time. Yes, you have some healing throughput with Avenging Crusader, but it is very hard to actually make use of it in social form. The healing is not spiky enough, the DPS is too spiky enough, so you will have difficult times with a Holy Paladin to actually like survive. So for me, it is going to be a C tier spec. Below average, like below good, it's going to be just not that good. It's not the worst spec, but it is very close to be the worst spec. We have another healer that is going to deserve the D spot, for example. But for me, C tier Holy Paladin, they die very quickly. They are very bad versus casters. Everything is actually dispellable. If you're facing a priest, Mass Dispel is too strong. Your Divine Shield will just not exist. A warrior can also just shadow throw you. You're going to have a tough time in general, so that's why for me it's going to be a C tier spec. Retribution Paladin is very lobby dependent. I'm going to say it is a good spec, but again, if you're facing versus a lot of classes that can like kite you, you're going to have a bad time. If you're playing versus like hardcore melees where you're going to destroy them with a final reckoning and such, you're going to have a better time. But again, your defensives are very limited. You're going to get blown up if they're watching and they're looking at you. But you, as a Retribution Paladin, if you can kite it and you can just time your burst, you're going to do great. You're also a great healer killer. You're doing billion of damage if you're taking the healer with a surprise Hajj without trinket. You can just one-shot, one-tap someone. That's pretty much the only thing that Retribution has. Self-healing is not good. Self-build is not good. Utility is quite good. The damage is quite good, but the mobility is very bad. So sometimes you want to do the damage, but you're kited and there goes your damage. So for me, it is a good spec, but nowhere near meta. Disc Priest. So, I might be very biased. I think Disc Priest is a good spec. I think the mana regen buffs are actually great for Disc Priest. They don't get as quickly. They do still get in Soul Shuffle, but I feel like I need to separate Disc Priest with Holy Paladin. I think Holy Paladin is not as good, and they have more CDs to use as a disc priest versus anyone. Pain suppression, barrier, rupture, which is a very big CD. Even a defensive mind games or offensive mind games can save you a game. Mass dispel, which is big versus a lot of specs. And yes, you are highly killable whenever you can get switched on, but it is you as a disc priest that can do a great job. Again, it is not meta. It is going to deserve a buff somehow, some way, but I cannot put them on the same tier as a Holy Paladin. Holy Priest is though a D tier spec. Doesn't have the throughput. They do get buffed. For me, it's not enough. They do need greater fade back. I can understand why they removed it because it was too easy to actually chastise into greater fade fear. But right now, your chastise is just an opening for the enemy team to know, okay, he's going for fear. I'm going to switch on the Holy Priest and make him fly to upwards or directly spirit. And that's just not enough. You have some crap buttons, but it is just not enough to actually survive damage or make other people survive. Whenever I'm playing with a Holy Priest, I know that I have to play less scared, because I know that they don't have the actual throughput to save me in Soul Shuffle. They are actually better with casters than with melees. Melees just die with a Holy Priest. That's my experience as an Arms Warrior. Shadow Priest, they got hit by a nerf, by a pretty big nerf. I'm going to show you. So Shadow Priest, they got buffed in PvE, but this you might say, oh my god, they buffed Shadow Priest by 15%, but they do get nerfed in PvP by 25%. So basically they get a 10% nerf overall. Does it make it like B tier or C tier? I don't think so. I think CC, utility, the actual combination of everything with your damage, your mobility, which is quite limited, your CC, which is quite good. I think it's the best CC that you can have as a DPS. The utility that you have with Void Shift, the CDs that you have with Dispersion, with other spells, are going to be very good in social environment. I think having a combination of a stun, silence, fear, or stun, fear, silence, or silence, stun, fear, everything on the healer, to be honest, you're going to have an opening like the second or third go, you're going to have a kill regardless, depending on the situation, of course. So I think Shadow Priests are going to be very good, but still, the nerfs are nerfs. They are going to cost a bit more, and just because of that, I think it's going to be a A tier spec. I think they've fallen over from S tier because I think other classes are going to get their spot. I think Demon Hunters being nerfed and Shadow Priest getting nerfed is good for the meta, but I think the meta will not be drastically changing because of that. I think the meta will change because of the classes that are not getting buffed or nerfed, and I'm going to show you really quickly in a few minutes. Assassination Rogue. So Assassination Rogue got nerfed. I'm going to show you really quickly the nerf. So it's 40% improved garrote. Everyone took that. And Iron War damage reduction debuff, also a lesser duration. That's not going to be changing a lot, I think. For me, the main change is the garrote damage. They also got hit by Deathmark a few time ago. I think it's still going to be very strong, but it is very lobby dependent. I'm going to put it in A tier, not S tier. A lot of people put it in S tier for some reason, but I think it is manageable to win versus an Assassination Rogue. Depending on lobbies, again, you can maybe one-shot someone, like a Resto Shaman can be one-shotted by an Assassination Rogue, at least like dampened with an Assassination Rogue. But the damage getting nerfed over and over will have its toll, because Assassination Rogue is basically just a damaging spec. You're going to overdo your damage to actually win games. Your CC is still there, your blind is there, your stuns are there, but often not, you use your stuns to kill the target, not to CC targets. You have gouge, you have blind, but even then it's going to be a bit iffy because it can be broken. For me, Assassination Rogue is still a meta spec though. A tier is very good, but I think the current S tiers are just too strong for them to actually compete. Outlaw Rogue for me is going to be a B tier spec. It is good. It is good. Just underplayed, but very good. The pistol shot like build that there is going on is actually very good. It does insane pressure, does a lot of damage. Just very consistent though, never really bursty. But that's enough in social. For you need to survive, be very consistent, and sometimes burst whenever you can. But consistency and survivability is probably the most important thing in Soul Shuffle. In my books, I think Outlaw is just underplayed because it's not as popular as the other specs. But people might switch it very soon and actually realize that Outlaw is actually a very good spec by its own. Subtlety Rogue, I think, yeah, they got nerfed multiple times on their burst. I think it's just under good. I would say it's Outlaw is probably better than Subtlety in my books. I know Ladder kind of contradicts me, but Subtlety is very cheesy. It always kills in the secret technique, or it never kills. It feels like the damage is too low to actually be good for a dampening game. And Soul Shuffle, even though the games are ending quickly, it is because of the dampening that the games are like quickly over. So for me, Subtlety Rogue doesn't really have a place in the meta. You can still climb with it. That's why it's C tier, not D tier. You're going to still be able to one-shot someone in a smoke bomb or shadowy duel or whatever. But I feel like outside of that, you don't really have a moment where you're going to kill someone because of your consistent pressure. I think Subtlety Rogues are just not made for Slow Shuffle. You can be performing. I know that in Soul Shuffle, you will see a Subtlety Rogue is sometimes lose versus them 6-0, like you 0-6 and them being 6-0, 4-2, I mean, because you all lost all the games versus the Rogue. But I feel like in general, rogues are going to be very annoying, and Subtleties are annoying spec to play against. But once you know their trick and their like habits, you're going to be actually winning versus them more easily. Now, controversial, but I'm going to think that Elemental Shaman is probably the best caster in the game. It just never got hit on the things that are actually meaningful. I know there is a Ailey Blast build going on where you're going to one-shot someone, but even then, that build is very cheesy. If you're going for the normal build, you're still going to be very good. And yes, you're going to say in the comments, but it is highly trainable. My DK, I'm facing DK's DH and he's going to kill me all the time. I don't know how to react. Basically, I know what you feel. I play Elemental Shaman too. But Elemental Shaman has tools to run away. And even if you're going on the Elemental Shaman still pumps. It's not like they're actually actively casting. I think the few things that are going to get casted are Hex, Stormkeepers, and yeah, sometimes a Lava Burst here and there. But your rotation, your burst rotation, requires 0 cost. So basically, you can just reverse Uno someone, even if they are training you. You're going to reverse Uno into someone into like the spirit realm. So for me, Elemental Shaman is insane. I feel like people are like sleeping on it. And yes, they can be S tier at one point, but they will get nerfed because for me, Elemental Shaman is now too easy to do burst. You need to cast somehow, some way. They decided to nerf Shadow Priest for that reason. And at one point, they will see Elemental Shamans. Yeah, I got killed by full instant spells and he never casted anything except a hex sometimes, and even then it was just a bait to actually get a kick out for the healer to actually heal. That's pretty much what's happening. Whenever they're casting something, it is basically saying to you, look, you have to kick me so my healer can actually heal you, right? So I feel like Elemental Shaman is really under the radar. I know that the ladder representation in trees is not as high, but that's basically because everyone is in Soul Shuffle. So the next actual spec we're going to discuss is one close to my heart, which is Enhancement Shaman. And I made a video, so a guide. I made also a Soul Shuffle video about it. I think it's a very fun spec to play. I think it just is not meta in the current meta. You do kill DKs pretty easily, but the problem is you do get destroyed by Demon Hunters, by Shadow Priests, Windwalkers. So that's a bit iffy. Also, you don't face nearly enough warriors to actually play with the PvP talents being immune to physical damage. Hunters are also quite rare. And you are also facing a lot of assassination rogues where that doesn't get applied as well. And you get killed in stuns. So just because of that fact, I'm not going to put it in D here, but I think it's going to be a C tier spec. I think it's really close to being good. I think it depends about a few buffs, if they get a few buffs here and there. But I think in general, it is not going to be very meta. So for me, it is a C tier spec. Resto Shaman. I think Resto Shaman is better than we thought it to be. The double Earthen totem is actually very strong. Earthen Wall totem is actually very strong, although it really demands DPS to actually stay near that totem, which is not always as simple because it's not very visible. Yeah, it's really hard for them to actually be super competitive. But I think, in my eyes, in this current meta, Resto Shaman is actually very good. I think it is only going to get better, and just because of that fact, I'm going to put it in A tier. And please do not shoot me down. I think Resto Shaman is just better because it has a lot more ladder representation. You have more agency. If you get the chance to actually have a Stormkeeper crit, you can make games by yourself. Yes, you are trainable, but no, you're not dying in just one stun. You have moments where you're going to survive because you have CDs. Outside of those CDs, yes, if they switch onto you, you're dead. But often than not, the comps that they are playing is pretty much with Death Knights, Demon Hunters, Shadow Priest. Like, all these characters are better kill targets than you because you don't want them to be in a free game, right? You want to train the Resto Shaman, but it's very hard to not like go on to the Shadow Priest because a Shadow Priest being free cast is very annoying. So that's pretty much your saving grace. The current meta actually favors you. I think the hardest specs to play against is probably Feral Druid and, let's say, a good Death Knight and sometimes a good Demon Hunter. Feral Druids is just insane. The pressure that can do onto you is very, very big. So that's why you have to probably go for Dwarf or Iron Dwarf so you can actually dispel bleeds onto you. It's also going to be very hard versus assassination rogues, sometimes versatility rogues, actually versus people that can actually chain stun you. That's your problem. Like, that's basically how you die, because you were stunned or silenced or like CC'd. And that's not enough reason to put it in B tier. I think it is just better than Disc. It is better than Mistweaver. It has a wind shear like interrupt from 30 yards, I think even higher. It is actually very insane. I think it's a very good spec overall. So for me, it deserves the A tier spot. Affliction Warlock. So for me, Affliction Warlock is not as good in Soul Shuffle as, let's say, their other specs. I think it is good it does benefit from the nerfs from Shadow Priests and Demon Hunters and other specs as well. I just think the current meta is to have impact directly into the match. Affliction Warlock doesn't have impact directly into the match. You cannot say that Affliction Warlock is going to kill you in the first 5 seconds of the match, but you can say that for Demonology Warlock with Fellstorm, although now it's nerfed, you can say about that for Windwalkers, you can say about that about Elemental Shamans, you can say that about Unholy DKs, even Shadow Priests, because they have insane damage whenever they want to do that. While, for example, Affliction Warlocks, they have to ramp up, they have to dot everyone, fear someone, go for a Soul Rot, a big Drain Life, which you have to actually stack up, so you will never have like a first 5-second win. That's not going to happen. And yes, it's not your purpose as a spec, but the problem is you cannot expect your teammates to survive until you are like up and running. Once you are up and running, you're going to do insane damage, which is not healable in Soul Shuffle, but that moment never really happens in like a lot of matches. There is a match where you're going to be, look, I only put 3 dots and someone is already dead in my team. Yes, they're not going to focus you because you're like pretty much unkillable with Soul Burn, Drain Life and such, but you're not going to kill anyone either, so your other DPS is going to suffer from it until you are like up and running. And that's why for me, I know it's a harsh rating, but I said I was going to be very harsh in Soul Shuffle. For me, it's a B tier spec. I cannot rate Affliction on the same level as Arcane or Shadow Priest because they are not like this, and they do get countered by a lot of specs. Resto Druid, very annoying to actually dot them. Resto Shaman, very annoying because he can just wind shear you, grounding totem you, tremor totem on fears. Like again, you as an Affliction Warlock, you're going to have a difficult times versus half of the cost. And then you have like melees that are going to destroy you. Like for example, Arms Warrior is going to destroy you with Wrecking Throw. Fury Warrior 2. In general, Feral Druid is going to slash you to bits. It's really, really not as great as you might think. Yes, you will be potent with Affliction Warlock. No, it is not a free spec, and you can also see that on the ladder. The ladder representation is a lot lower than Destro and Demonology Warlock, while Affliction is a fan favorite spec. So it has nothing to do with the fun factor, like say like an Outlaw Rogue, but it has everything to do with the current strength of that spec. Demonology Warlock, it got nerfed in like that patch, so Fellstorm is going to do a lot less damage. People will probably not play with Fellstorm anymore. They will play with the with other like talents. You have a lot of space to actually use as a Demonology Warlock. They might still use it still, but now it is not a necessity, and also you will kill probably outside of Fellstorm. While for example, right now you can kill someone basically by Fellstorming a whole team, and it's unhealable for a healer. Right now you will have your Tyrant doing more damage. Now the problem is with Tyrant is it is highly killable first and foremost because it is actually killable in Dragonflight. People just don't do that because it doesn't do as much damage as in Shadowlands. It is highly fearable, CCable. Everything you can do, you can stop him. You can even root and then go like towards a pillar and you're good. You can also just kite, like I said, around the pillar and you're good to go. They're not going to TP onto you like let's say a Pit Lord can do, and basically you need to set it up. If you want to do a big Tyrant go, you will have to need a lot of like demons, so it makes you a lot easier to target. Before with Fellstorm, it's very hard to actually go for demonology because again, he can just do Fellstorm, the dread bite from the dogs, and just maybe the Bitlord. If you're like next to him, you're not kiting the Bitlord, right? But right now, if you're going for the Tyrant goes, it's a lot easier to go on him, stop every hand of cooldown so he doesn't have a lot of damage on the Tyrants, and you're good to go. So I feel like Demonology Warlock is not going to be S tier anymore. I feel like it's going to be A tier. They got hit pretty hard, although they did seem to say that they want to have the same power level. It's not the case. Tyrants are a lot easier to track. You're going to play a lot more safer as well. I feel like in trees it's going to be still very good because you can play with Elemental Shaman, for example. You will have a lot of success with it. But in comps where you're going to play versus triple melees as a Demonology Warlock, you're not going to have a free game. That's for sure. Yes, you will have some comps in Soul Shuffle where you're going to be a god, but that's not every comp. So that's why for me it's an A tier spec. Destruction Warlock. Destruction Warlock, in my eyes, with all the buffs coming right now, but also on the PTR, it is going to be the hidden gem on this patch. For me, it is going to be a S tier spec. I don't care what everyone is saying. It has huge ladder representation at higher tier of levels. It has tankiness higher than a Demonology Warlock, higher than an Affliction Warlock, without Drain Lifing. Bear in mind, Drain Lifing all the time means that you're killing your damage, while, for example, Destruction Warlock doesn't have to do that. You have Versatility. I made a guide about Destruction Warlock, by the way, if you want to check that out. You have Versatility, which is reducing the damage taken, and also you will heal more, and you will also do more damage. You have Mastery, which is doing more damage, but also more damage reduction. So you have always a percentage of damage reduction that is going to be applied to you. You can play this Soul Link build, again, what I play right now. Basically, you're transferring 10% of that damage to your pet, and you will have less crits on you. And whenever you're below 35%, which is happening very often in Soul Shuffle, you will have a 20% damage reduction extra because of your pets. And the pets are not dying quickly. So basically, Destruction Warlock is the most tanky caster in the game. And basically, even they are going for you, you're still going to do a lot of damage. Yes, doing Chaos Bolts are going to be a luxury, I would say, because they will not let you cast Chaos Bolts. But what you can do is channel Demon Fire, Conflags, Shadow Burn, Incinerate, Instant Incinerates, Fizz, which people don't kick that because, again, they don't want you to Chaos Bolt, so they are only going to Chaos Bolt kick you. They can also kick on fire, but then again, you can Fear or Chaos Bolt. It's one of the best classes for Soul Shuffle. And I was thinking in the beginning, look, I'm a Destruction Warlock, I'm getting trained, and I cannot do a lot of damage. But then I realized that by changing my spec in concordance with Soul Shuffle and with the in mind that I'm not going to cast a lot of Chaos Bolt, I have a lot more success with it. And I would recommend a lot of people to play Destruction Warlock if you're tired of Demonology. Play it, test it, try to run away a bit more, and try to face tank. Sometimes whenever you see that interrupts are on CD, you have to face tank a bit to do more damage. And whenever you can do damage, you're going to destroy people, and then you will realize, on details, I am top damage while I didn't cast one single Chaos Bolt, and that's pretty much the reason. So for me, it is a hidden gem. It is not on par with Elemental Shaman, again, because Elemental Shaman is a bit more intuitive. Again, you will get procs, so you'll do a lot of damage, while Destruction Warlock, you will not realize it until you have played a lot of games with it, but you will have a lot of success with it, especially with the current meta, with Demon Hunters being fallen out of grace. Windwalkers also, their burst is going lower. The only thing that is going to stop you is probably a DK, but even then a DK is going to be highly killable as well once you don't have EMS. So you have some ways to actually do damage. Feral Druids, they are your kill target. You're going to enjoy them because they are going to stick on you, and they don't have a Cyclone, so they cannot stop you. And once they don't have an Interrupt, and their stun is probably for the healer, I mean, you can also already see the paintings, right? So you're going to do a lot of damage versus them. So for me, very strong. Please do not underestimate Destruction Warlock. You can also just see on the ladder, you can also see on Twitch, multiple Destruction Warlocks are actually popping off, and that's not because they are only good, but they are also playing a good spec. Remember, a good player often plays also a good spec. Anyways, Arms Warrior, and that is my fan favorite spec. My channel covers a lot of Arms Warrior. Unfortunately, I do a lot of Soul Shuffles where I'm winning and then people leave, but fortunately that will change in the next coming patches, so that's very good. Arms Warrior is good. It will be better, but right now it is not better. It's not 10.05. I will make a video once 10.05 is live and running, whenever I have games under my belt at 10.05. I think it is just a good spec. I think it's a good spec. It is very, very on the verge of meta. Problem is, whenever you're facing an Elemental Shaman, you have a tough ride. It is disgusting how easily it is to kite you, because they can just unleash shield, they can turn a storm, they can root you with a totem, they can static field totem you as well. I mean, it's really annoying. And Elemental Shaman, even if you're training him, he's going to 100 and 0 you if you're just blinking with your eyes. Often than not, you have to play like a little. Anyways, I'm not going to say that word because I want to have the monetization. But basically, you have to play annoying and like a coward. And it is what it is, though. We're going to have changes. Ignore Pain is going to come back, and at one point you will be like golden. But for now, you will have to play like this until the changes. You can still climb with it, but I think it's not the easiest spec to play with it, depending on the metas. The good thing is, the more Warlocks there are meta, the better for you, because you can train a Destruction Warlock very hard compared to, let's say, Elemental Shaman. And it's easier to reflect a Chaos Bolt than reflect one Lava Burst that is going to chain Lava Burst you anyways. So that's pretty much my take. Fury Warriors, I think it's on the same tier. You can see yourself what you're thinking about Fury, if it's better or not. For me, it's kind of the same. Really, they are better versus casters, but a bit worse versus melees. Well, for example, Arms Warriors are a bit better versus melees and a bit worse versus casters. So that's pretty much the like yin and yang of the Warriors class, right? So you have Fury versus casters, and then you have Arms versus melees. And I wish you could change specs whenever you see someone facing you, so you can actually change Fury if you are playing versus casters, and change into Arms whenever you're playing versus melees, but that's not the case. So pretty much this is the tier list. S tier, again, I'm going to repeat, S tier is God tier, A tier is meta, B tier is good, C tier is underpowered, and D tier is pretty much like garbage, unfortunately. I'm going to rank this accordingly really quickly. So I'm going to do the healers in the middle and the casters at the right. So pretty much for me, Affliction Warlock is better than Balance Druid. I think Frost Mage is better than Balance Druid. Retribution Paladin is probably worse than Arms Warrior in my books. I think Outlaw is better than Arms and Fury. BM Hunter is in between Frost Mage and Balance Druid, and MM is worse than Balance Druid in my books. Healer wise, I would say Mistweaver is better than Disc, but you will see more representation of Disc Priest probably because it's more fun to play. Now let's say for the A tier, I think this is pretty much the ranking for casters. Now for the DPSs, I think it will be like this. So you have Demon Hunter, Windwalker, and then Assassination Rogue, and then of course you have Resto Shaman in the middle, between melees and healers. Casters, it will be like this. Healers, it will be like this in my books, and then you have Unholy DK being the top dog. C tier, I would say Survival is a bit better than Subroutine in general. Frost DK is probably the worst melee spec. Devastation is probably more like, again, it's a caster, so it's difficult to actually know. Enhancement Shaman is probably better than Survival in my books. And that's it. This is pretty much my tier list. So please let me know what you think about this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. And if you want more content, be sure to, again, watch my channel. You will see guides, tips, tricks. You have also a lot of PvP content with our solo shuffle, BGs, RBGs. I'll try to post more content, but it's very hard for me. I'm still working full time. So yeah, bear with me. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. And it helps me a ton more than you would know. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.